So I always keep this fake Hollywood money in my car. So when a homeless person asks for money, then I give them like a fake $5 bill. So I feel good about myself. They feel good. And then when they go to use it, they get arrested. So I'm actually like helping clean up the community, getting them off the street.
This guy is the senior advisor to Project 2025, the bill that turns America into a dictatorship, legalizes using the military on protesters, abolishes women's rights, gets rid of anti-discrimination laws, and much more. Go watch my other videos, it's a long list. He even joked that he wanted to get rid of the 19th Amendment, which is women's right to vote.
I think this video has made me rethink the 19th Amendment, but let's keep it going.
So I always keep this fake Hollywood money in my car. So when a homeless person asks for money, then I give them like a fake $5 bill. So I feel good about myself.
The best way to spot an idiot: look for the person who is cruel. Let me explain. When we see someone who doesn't look like us, or sound like us, or act like us, or love like us, or live like us, the first thought that crosses almost everyone's brain is rooted in either fear or judgment, or both. That's evolution. We survived as a species by being suspicious of things that we aren't familiar with. In order to be kind, we have to shut down that animal instinct and force our brain to travel a different pathway. Empathy and compassion are evolved states of being. They require the mental capacity to step past our most primal urges. This may be a surprising assessment because somewhere along the way in the last few years, our society has come to believe that weaponized cruelty is part of some well thought out master plan. They never forced their animal brain to evolve past its first instinct. They never forged new mental pathways to overcome their own instinctual fears. And so their thinking and problem solving will lack the imagination and creativity that the kindest people have in spades. Over my many years in politics and business, I have found one thing to be universally true: the kindest person in the room is often the smartest. The best way to spot...
Isn't that something? Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known, and welcome to my black job. So, and I'm sure many of you are headed to your black jobs. So thanks for joining us. These folks, this guy wants to, he's thinking that like that's a flex, that he gives like homeless people fake money, and his hope is that they use it and get arrested. Mm. Yep. This is America, and it's not good. The president of Florida's only public historically black college and university, FAMU, is resigning amid the backlash over the school's apparent failure to properly vet a multi-million-dollar donation from a dubious donor. We're going to talk about that this morning. That is just crushing to FAMU, crushing to any HBCU that this would happen. And naturally, an HBCU was targeted. And don't think that for one moment that this guy picked FAMU randomly. Don't think that at all. The only HBCU in the state of Florida. Yesterday marked the 10th anniversary of the infamous police chokehold killing of Eric Garner. We'll get into that this morning as well. Initial autopsy results showed traces of cyanide in the blood of 6 Vietnamese and American guests at a luxury hotel in central Bangkok, and one of them is believed to have poisoned the others over a bad investment. Just found that to be really, really strange. In Bangkok, we'll get into that as well. Forbes Magazine has pulled an op-ed that said Trump may use shooting to appeal to black voters, and they fired a contributor who also happens to be black. I mean, that headline, if anybody saw that on Sunday, this past Sunday, the day after the alleged assassination attempt on Trump, this got a lot of attention on social media. People were calling it out as the most stupid posting most that Forbes would allow this. And it's so funny because they're scrambling like rats over at Forbes. All of the reporters there have distanced themselves. And it turns out Forbes actually twice changed the wording in the article. Um, this guy was a contributor, and he essentially was the article, the headline suggested that Trump would appeal more to black folks now that he has allegedly been shot at. And there's still talk, by the way, before we move on to what our next topic would be, but still talk that 50 Cent may close the RNC with a tribute song to Trump as Trump walks out of the arena in Milwaukee. We'll see. The second judge in the Young Thug trial has stepped down. Remember, we brought you yesterday that they had appointed a new judge to take over that unbelievably long and crazy trial down in Atlanta. Now she has stepped aside from that before she even heard one bit of testimony. We'll get into that this morning. And of course, Project 2025. Today, we're going to talk about the effects of student loan debt and eliminating programs aimed at helping minority students in K to 12 schools. And ironically, and we'll get into this as well, the president just announced about an hour ago. Yeah, he's up early. You know, older people get up early. They get up early. That's make no mistake about it. He's 81 years old. He's up with my grandmother used to get up. It was like the break of dawn, and she'd be up. She in the kitchen. She's already got her morning newspaper, and she would just be ready for the day. And Aunt Pam said, "We sure do." Aunt Pam, you're not necessarily that old yet. And Aunt Pam talking about, "We sure do." And she up there doing Beyonce concerts. She's like you know, traveling the world. But nonetheless, Aunt Pam's mom, she'd be get up all the time. She'd get up, break of dawn. The sun hadn't even come up, and grandma's up, and she's taking care of business. And that's exactly, older people too. They think they're saying something. She go, TCB, I'm TCB. Like it. Okay, grandma, you taking care of business. All right, all right. but but we'll talk about Project 2025 this morning again, because there's so much to talk about with Project 2025. And it's so refreshing that more people are starting to talk about it, despite all of this other stuff that is going on. It still may get lost in the sauce, especially with mainstream media. But it's really refreshing that we getting folks talking about it. And again, if you haven't read Michael Harriot and the Griot from a few days ago, I mean, he broke down about 10 parts um, about how bad it is, Project 2025, for Black Americans in particular. Yeah, Austin, don't be kissing up to Aunt Pam, Austin. Good morning, Aunt Pam. Relax. Go eat your Captain Crunch and relax. Well, the president of Florida's only public HBCU is resigning. This situation is just it's really infuriating. Um, she goes, "Hey, Austin." It's really infuriating. Larry Robinson submitted his resignation, and he's going to leave Florida A&M at a time when state officials are scrutinizing programs at the school that they say are underperforming, and as increasing political influence reshapes the state's higher education landscape. I mean, the governor down near the DeSantis has really, he has done as much damage to education in Florida as what is that woman's name that didn't know the first thing about education, but she was the education secretary under Trump. Um, and he's done so much damage there. with education, particularly for folks who are not white. Power 96 says the Atlanta Daily had a press conference about Project 2025 yesterday. And Daniela Pierre about this situation says that it was orchestrated by a number of political forces. The quote donor and donation weren't worth 2 wooden nickels. Yeah, it was this gigantic, and you probably remember the image of the Mr. Robinson holding up that huge $237 million check, which, if it was legitimate, would have been the single largest private donation to an HBCU ever. And this school is 137 years old. Betsy DeVos was the former education secretary. Thanks, Power 96. But this school is 137 years old. 137 years old. And of course, there's been public outcry over the university's handling of the donation, which took, and this wasn't a donation. It took the form of millions of shares in the donor Gregory Jeremy's fledgling industrial hemp company. So the idea of, so it had red flags all over. It did. And I'm just, it's a little stunning that Mr. Robinson uh, did not go through the vetting process on that. You could see the excitement. You can understand the excitement. 237 million. But then you got to question. You got to question. Okay, is this real? Because that's the first. Come on, somebody wins the lottery. The first thing they go, is this real? Is it? How many times when they win the lottery, they look at the numbers 5, 10, 12, 15, whatever it is, and they look at it again, and then they look at it again, and they keep checking, and then they call like their spouse or their kid or some. Can you look at this? It reminds me of this great scene from Uptown Saturday Night, Sidney Poitier, and oh, the beautiful black woman that was his wife in that movie. What was her name? But anyway, he's on the couch and he couldn't even talk. He's looking at the numbers. He couldn't believe that he had won this lottery, and he's looking at the numbers, and he couldn't even talk. And she's like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Is he like having a heart attack or something?" And she looks at the number, and she couldn't talk. It was $50,000 that they had won. And so in this case with Robinson, the guy comes in, a 237 million. You look at that and you go, "Oh my gosh, are you for real?" And then you call in other folks from the board. Is he for real? So while he has to suffer those consequences, the fact is this particular HBCU, like all HBCUs, is targeted. And this was no mistake. This was not random. The only HBCU in the state of Florida. This was not random, folks. And again, as we get into later with Project 2025, HBCUs are going to struggle to survive just like any other Black institution under a second Trump administration. Good morning, Monique. Mike V says, after dealing with Freedmen's Bank, Black folks have a distrust of the system. Absolutely. Power 96, he's not joking when he says he keeps his money under the mattress or somewhere else in the house. Like I said, I did the same thing. I had a safe or whatever, and paycheck, whatever, took my money out of the bank, just kept it in the house until then I realized when I was buying a home that they won't let you buy a home if you have kept your money under the mattress, unless you're going to pay for it in total cash. If you're not getting a FHA loan or a Fannie Mae, whatever loan, they will not let you. They will not give you a home loan if you keep your money in the. So they want you to deal with the banks. It's all a scam. It's all a scam. So, but it's a sad story. It's a really sad story. And it's unfortunate that this is going to hurt FAMU in a major way. It's going to continue to hurt FAMU in a major way. Power 96. I told y'all my mattress is my bank. But it's sad that this has again. What's ahead, folks? Think about what's lies ahead, and it's only a couple more months before it becomes official, if it's going to happen, that this guy is going to he and his project 2025 is going to be the rule of law in the United States of America. So November 5th, I'm pretty sure that there'll be tens of millions, hundreds of millions at their television set. In Russia, how about this? That's to show you just where things really are. Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation have come out and endorsed, of course, Donald Trump. That tells you a lot too. Come on, that tells you a whole lot. Yesterday was a somber anniversary, folks. 10 years since the death of Eric Garner at the hands of New York City police officers, which made the slogan "I can't breathe" a rallying cry. We know that video showed Eric Garner gasping that phrase while locked in a police chokehold, and it kicked off really Black Lives Matter protests in New York and across the country. More demonstrations followed weeks later when Michael Brown, an 18-year-old black man, was fatally shot by a police officer in Ferguson. And then 6 years later, George Floyd was recorded uttering the exact same words as he begged for air while a white Minneapolis police officer pressed his knee into his neck, sparking a new wave of mass protests. Eric Garner's mother, Gwen Carr, planned to lead a march honoring her son yesterday on Staten Island, the borough where police choked Garner to death. Officer Daniel Pantaleo. Gwen told the TV station New York One, I miss New York One. I used to watch New York One all the time. But she told New York One that she is still trying to keep her son's name relevant and fighting for justice. It was July the 17th, 2014, when Pantaleo and other officers who suspected that he was selling cigarettes, loose cigarettes, we call them loosies. He lost his life for selling a cigarette, not weed, any type of drugs, a cigarette. This Pantaleo wrapped his arms around Eric Garner's neck, and you heard it, you saw it. I can't breathe, and then he lost conscious, never to regain it again. Pronounced dead at the hospital. Authorities determined that Pantaleo had used a chokehold that was banned in the 1990s, and the city's medical examiner's office ruled that Eric Garner's death was indeed a homicide. But neither state nor federal prosecutors filed criminal charges against Pantaleo or any of the other officers who was present. And here we are. Pantaleo was fired in 2019 after a police disciplinary proceeding. Garner's family, Eric Garner's family, received a $5.9 million settlement, but they have continued to seek justice for Eric Garner's death. Austin says, while black officers stood by. And the person, like Mike V mentioned, the person who recorded the incident was also arrested. Danielle, going back for a moment to FAMU, Danielle Pierre, I have to mention what she says. She says the so-called donor was sitting up there with that too tight jacket on and two different color blue suits. That alone should have been a red flag. So something weird happened in Vietnam. Autopsy results have showed traces of cyanide in the blood of 6 Vietnamese and American guests at a luxury hotel in central Bangkok. And one of them is believed to have been poisoned to have poisoned the others over a bad investment. The bodies were found earlier this week in the Grand Hyatt in Bangkok, which is a landmark at a central intersection in the capital, busy with malls, government buildings, and public transit. The 6 people had last been seen alive when food was delivered to the room Monday afternoon. The staff saw one woman receive the food, and security video showed the rest arriving one by one shortly after. There were no other visitors. No one was seen leaving, and the door was locked from the inside. A maid found them on Tuesday afternoon when they failed to check out of the room. When the maid entered the room, she found that the food ordered from the previous day was left untouched, with some servings of fried rice still under plastic wrap. But while the food was untouched, several used teacups were on a nearby table next to 2 thermal bottles, I should say. Um, some forensic experts or officers found traces of cyanide in the cups and the bottles. And so, wow, eh, at a hotel. They said a CAT scan found no signs of blunt force trauma. So it leads authorities to only one conclusion, that they were they were poisoned. And they believe that for some reason that this was a business deal that went wrong, and someone got revenge. The ages of these victims range from 37 years old to 56 years old. And the authorities say that the case appeared to be personal and it would not impact the safety of tourists. A husband and wife are among the dead, and they had invested about 10 million baht, which is about 278,000 US dollars, with 2 of the others. And they're saying that maybe that's the motive. And that investment was meant to build a hospital in Japan, and the group might have been meeting to settle that matter. And it's speculation. Um, and while police are theorizing that one killed the rest, they did not say which of the 6 was the suspect. So they're saying that even the suspect is among the dead. 2 of the people, according to police and their forensics, uh, appeared to have tried to reach the door but collapsed before they could. Um, there was a 7th person that did come to the room, but police do not believe that person has any involvement in the deaths. So this Grand Hyatt, though, is one of Bangkok's. It's a 5-star hotel. It's one of Bangkok's landmark hotels. There's a shrine that sits on the corner of his block, and that shrine is like a major tourist attraction. It turns out, like, astrologers had advised the government to construct that shrine back in 1956. Um, Mike V says, "That's why I only drink closed bottled water. Don't play around with these folks these days." And Power 96 says, "I'm pretty sure I'm still wanted in Thailand. I borrowed an elephant and went on a joy ride. Great memories." Um, Bangkok is not in Vietnam, right? David, we're I'm with you, David. I'm with you. Um, I just thought this was really interesting. So supposedly a business deal gone wrong, and everybody's dead of cyanide poisoning. We don't usually travel across to Vietnam to bring you news, do we? Um, we're gonna come back over here where things are so screwed up. Forbes magazine has removed an opinion article that they ran and got so much attention this past Sunday that in its headline asks whether former president and the twice impeached and 34 times convicted felon former President Donald Trump would consider using, quote, surviving gunfire to appeal to black voters after an apparent, or as we call it, an alleged assassination attempt. The piece by the University of Southern California professor and self-described diversity, equity, inclusion expert Sean Harper, who is black, drew swift backlash online in a rebuke from the Forbes editorial union. Some called it sick and twisted, while others said the article was insanely offensive and race baiting. The backlash called into question how the piece could have been published and what the business magazine's editorial policy is for contributors, writers who are not on staff. In an email, Harper told the Washington Post that his story was mischaracterized. He wrote to the Post that many people who only see my article's headline are mistaking, quote, appeal, the verb, makes Trump appealing to black voters. Harper said that's the opposite of what he wrote. However, the union representing Forbes writers denounced the story on Twitter, saying that this post does not represent who we are as a newsroom or our ethical and journalistic principles. Nina Turner, she was not having it. She called the article ridiculous and insulting. One business reporter at the Boston Globe wrote that, quote, this wasn't written by a journalist. It's commentary and labeled inappropriately by Forbes. There are at least two archived versions of the article. The first, which is 709 words, was archived on Saturday night at 10:27 p.m. The second was updated and is 726 words and was archived Sunday at 8:37 a.m. In the updated story, at least two sentences were added, which include, quote, hopefully Trump doesn't claim that his raised fist was in homage to Smith and Carlos, two powerful black Americans, and hopefully being shot doesn't become a similarly problematic strategy to link Trump with an experience that far too many black people have. Of course, y'all know who Smith and Carlos, right? Tommy Smith and John Carlos were the U.S. medal-winning Olympians whose Black Power salute on the medal stand in Mexico City in 1968, of course, it will forever be remembered. But Harper noted that Trump has tried influencing black voters after his indictment on several charges, along with his mugshot being taken during one of his cases last year. Trump infamously, the blacks can relate to me. He says, the blacks. He described Trump raising his fist after the former president said a bullet grazed him in the ear during that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then went on to describe track athletes Smith and Carlos raising their fists in Mexico City. As of yesterday, Harper's, this writer, his author's page on Forbes says, quote, former contributor. Yep. Power 96 says, I can see Trump using that. He used gold sneakers in a mugshot. Now, they've updated those gold sneakers, added red to them, and now he's selling them for $299, I think it was, a pop, with that picture of him bloodied. Mike V says, interestingly enough, I didn't hear the NRA come out and speak about and defend the Second Amendment. Well, it's interesting too, since you brought that up, Mike. I think was it the Teamsters Union have said that they're not going to endorse either candidate, and this after touting President Biden as the most union-friendly president ever. This is what they said about him, and noting how Trump's policies when he was in office tried to dismantle unions. The unions are behaving like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. He can do everything he can to harm you, call your wife ugly, and you support him. So isn't their move tantamount to supporting him, or non-move tantamount to supporting him? Tell me. Tell me, how is it that you get up there and tout this man as the best president for unions, the best thing that ever happened to unions as far as the presidency concerned, and Trump being the worst, and yet you're saying I'm not going to endorse the Biden-Harris ticket. Look, make no mistake, there are too many who don't want to see Kamala Harris ascend to the presidency. Here's something else too that don't want to really fly under the radar because it's disturbing. Y'all remember the Super Bowl champion Terrell Davis. Well, United Airlines has apologized to the Hall of Famer after an incident that left him handcuffed and removed from a flight.
We're not familiar with the story. You're
there you
on a
go.
flight.
Yeah.
Beverage service starts.
Yeah.
Tell us what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's an ordinary flight. They have the beverage service that starts, and I'm in row 11, and I'm in the aisle. My oldest son is right next to me in the middle seat. My youngest son is in the window seat. My wife is across the aisle, and my wife and daughter across the aisle in one row back.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a typical flight, nothing out of the ordinary. Beverage service starts, and the gentleman pulls up, and I'm reading a magazine. My kids are playing with their iPads, so I heard him ask, like, "What do you want? Like beverage? What do you want?"
Mm-hmm.
And they were busy playing with the iPad, so they didn't respond. And I remember the tone got a little bit more aggressive, and I was like, man, that was kind of rude for him to ask my kids like that. So they got startled. They ordered their drinks, and I remember this. He puts the drinks down on the tray, but with force. Like just kind of slams them down. They say, "Thank you." He doesn't say anything. So I was like, all right, whatever. So he asked me my order. I give him my order again, kind of slams the drink down. And again, I'm thinking, well, what is going on with this guy? But whatever. As he gives me my drink, he starts to move the cart. And my son says, "Excuse me, might I have some ice?" And he obviously didn't hear my son ask for ice. So he moved the cart probably past my seat. And so my hand was up like, "Excuse me." And then I finally said, "Excuse me, can I get some ice?" I just tapped him on the shoulder. He swings his arm back and said, "Don't hit me." And I'm like, "Dude, I didn't hit you." And then he rushes up to the front of the plane. He leaves the cart right there. And the gentleman in front of me turns around and says, "I saw everything. I saw that. Like why did you didn't hit him?" I'm like, "Of course I didn't hit him." So as I'm sitting there on the plane, it was bizarre because he's up there for a couple of minutes. And again, I was like, whatever. So I started reading the magazine.
So you don't think anything of it?
Nothing of it.
Yeah.
He comes back. He puts the cup of ice on my son's tray. He then takes the cart and takes it back up to first class. And about 3 minutes later, another flight attendant takes over. She brings the cart down, starts servicing the area, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. But then
I don't see him for the rest of the flight.
You don't see him for the rest of
the flight.
But what did you see when you landed? What did you hear and see once the plane had
that's
landed?
A different story. I mean, when we landed, they told everybody to remain in their seats because for whatever reason. And I thought it was a medical emergency. I fly a lot, so I've seen that before where they say, "Stay in your seat. Someone they need to tend to." And so I've seen that before. So again, I'm just reading a magazine, and 4 or 5 minutes pass. And then my head is down, and I can hear like the walkie-talkies. I hear a lot of the gear and wrestling of like you can hear when they come on, and everybody you can kind of hear like the alls or like you can hear people
the reactions
to them coming on.
Yeah.
When you say they coming on, who's coming on? The FBI.
FBI, big FBI letters on the jackets.
Big as daylight. Can't miss it.
Yeah.
Okay.
FBI. I believe it was Orange County Sheriff Department. Guys with green. I didn't know who they were at the time, but you can tell it was
law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Without without explaining to me why they were doing it. They walk up to me and the guy he whispers in my ear. He says, "Don't fight it," and he puts cuffs on me
while I'm
sitting down.
With everybody still on the plane.
Everybody's on the plane.
He never introduced, acknowledged or confirmed that it was Terrell.
Or say,
He
hey,
didn't-
here's why. Here's what
why we're
happened.
doing this, or
Nothing.
can I ask what happened? He just walked straight up to him and placed hands.
And what was it like for you to make it to see your husband in handcuffs?
I thought it was a joke, because what else could it be? And I saw the agents come on, so of course it caught my attention like everyone else, and they just walked straight up to Terrell and just played. And so I jumped out of my seat and I said, wait a minute, like what's going on? And I hopped over the woman next to me, and I was kind of like, to Terrell, are you joking? Like, is this a practical, is this a prank? Like, and he just said quietly, no, it's not. And I'm looking at my sons, who are sitting right next to him, watching their dad being handcuffed. And what could we do? And I'm asking them, what is going on? Like, why are you doing this? Why? And they pick him, have him stand up and pull him out. So I go after him and he's telling me to stop. And then I'm standing there. The kids are still sitting in their seat. Everyone's staring at us.
It was just.
Ages 9 to 13?
We have 13. Our sons are 13 and 11. Our daughter is 9. No one helped me.
Yeah.
No, they came back. They asked for a jacket to drape over Terrell's wrist. I said, can we get off the plane? So I yelled to the kids, let's go. I grabbed Terrell's bag out of the overhead. Where do we go? Like, what do we do? I want to go with him. We were just left to fend for ourselves on a flight with everyone staring at us.
And let's take us, for people who are not familiar with the story. You're on a flight.
It is infuriating. Greer Wright says it's infuriating. It is infuriating. And it's, it reinforces too what I've been saying, others have said, I'm sure. It does not matter. This man is he's a Hall of Fame Super Bowl champion. He's a wealthy man, well respected, but he's black. It does not matter to these folks. And that's why those who are on their high horse, those who think they're untouchable, they're coming to touch you. They're going to do more than just touch you. This is so upsetting in front of his wife, in front of his kids. And you can see they've acknowledged, United Airlines, that they messed up. They've sidelined, perhaps even fired this flight attendant. But she's sitting there and she's traumatized. She's sitting there with Robin Roberts in a safe space, yet she's traumatized, just about crying. This is what they do. They want to break you. They want to break. So everybody want to sit there and watch a Tim Scott and a Amber Rose and them want to tout and big up the chief of this MAGA stuff and this Project 2025 stuff. And look, this is no time to play. Playtime's over. They are as for real as they were in 1776, 1619. They are as for real as they were then. And I was looking, Roland Martin spoke with Representative Joyce Beatty, Congressional Black Caucus. She told Roland on air that Democrats want Biden out so they could take Kamala Harris out. This is a sitting congresswoman, a member of the CBC. Now, she supports Biden-Harris ticket, but she's telling the truth. She said the quiet part out loud. They can't have this black woman. So the Democrats' real fear is like the rest of racist America's fear. You cannot have this black woman in the Oval Office. And it's just incredible that you have folks aligning themselves with that. Black folks aligning themselves with that. Where would we be without the Black woman? Where would not just us, but especially us, but where would America be without the Black woman? This this is nauseating. Nauseating. And for that flight attendant, and I know these flight attendants. I've seen them. In fact, I just flew United Airlines first class Friday. I know what they look like, and in some cases, unfortunately, I know what they smell like. That plane, I got on the plane on the way to Denver, and that was last Sunday. And everybody smelled like they had been doing stuff, unholy stuff, without cleaning themselves. But that's not the point. It just memories. Remember, these things just pop up, folks. But the thing about it is that so I fly American a lot. If I don't fly American, I fly Delta, and once in a while United. And this past week it was United. Um, but they look at you as a Black person, not just the passengers, but certainly, and I make sure to work the heck out of those flight attendants. They see that, and oftentimes I'm the only Black person in first class. And I work the heck out of them. Yes, I want some. I want some extra chips. Yes, I want a second, a third drink. Yes, bring it. Would you like something else to eat? Yes, I do. Yes, thank you. I mean, what they did to Terrell Davis and his family, and Terrell said, and I'm so glad that he added this. He said, "My lawyers are in touch. Don't let up. Don't let that go. Do not let that go. 'Cause this is systemic, and the only way to fight systemic is to be systemic in your approach. Go after them. Go so in the court of public opinion, court of law, civil courts, and press. I would press to see what type of criminal charges that could be brought against that flight attendant. Because anytime there's an encounter between law enforcement and a Black person, male, female, there's always a chance, a better than 50-50 chance that it's going to result in death for that Black person. Austin says he's telling Aunt Pam to make me behave on planes. It's just sad. It's real, but it's it's not sad. It's infuriating, and it's something that um you can't just let go. And it's nice to see Terrell Davis and his wife on with Robin Roberts really magnifying this. A second judge in the RICO case involving a young Doug and the alleged YSL street gang has recused herself from the case. She was just appointed. In a written order yesterday, Judge Shakura Ingram cited her court's former assigned deputy's allegations relating to a YSL defendant, Christian Eppinger. Eppinger's case was severed from the rest of the YSL defendants last year after it was alleged that the deputy tried to sneak contraband to him in jail with the help of one of his family members. So referring to that episode, Judge Ingram wrote the deputy, quote, could be called as a witness in any future proceedings in this case. And so she might be called upon to assess this deputy's credibility or rule on matters related to her criminal prosecution. This may undermine the public's confidence in the impartiality of the proceedings. She says, while the court does not regard the aforementioned situation as creating any actual bias for or against any party to this case, the court does view this as a matter that could cause a reasonable person to question the court's impartiality and reasonably give rise to the appearance of impropriety should the court remain on this case. At this point, folks, I mean, you don't want anyone to get away with a violent crime, certainly a violent crime, which is what young Doug is accused of. But at this point, it's like you watch boxing. I used to watch boxing years ago, and fighters getting pummeled, and they throw in the towel. They stop the fight. Stop the fight. At this point, stop the case. The prosecution side, certainly the persons overseeing the case, the judges. This is ridiculous. Stop it. Let the man go home. I don't know this guy. I don't know his music. I'm not a fan. But in the interest, they always talk about in the interest of justice. In the interest of justice, in the interest of fairness. That you see that blind statue that they always talk about. Supposed, justice is supposed to be blind. No, let this man go on. You have blown this. You've blown it. And and if he did these crimes, he wouldn't be the first one to get away with doing such crimes. But at this point, it's ridiculous. 2+ years of this and the shenanigans, and then what that former judge did. Come on. And now look who's taking over. Judge Paige Whitaker. Judge Paige Whitaker. Now, the first judge, black man. Second judge, black woman. Now they're saying, okay, we're gonna get this right this time. We're gonna get this right. And so who they pick? Miss Daisy. So it's like, come on. This is the whole case is crazy. Power 96. He says it seems like Lil Woody is the only person with common sense. And we know the story of Lil Woody. But this is, this should not go on. A third judge. You gotta believe, based on the way the law is, you gotta believe that if this trial does continue, and apparently it is, and if he's convicted, he's got like 1,000 things that he could appeal on, including this shenanigans that the state is pulling. This is another reason that to be really, really cautious of the criminal justice system if you are a person of color, or a person that doesn't really have any money. And obviously, young Doug does have money, but imagine they've been dragging this out 2+ years. They have the resources. See, they drain your resources, and that's why they get plea deals that they otherwise, wouldn't. Because they bleed folks dry, particularly black and brown folks, to the point where you gotta admit to something, even something you didn't do. It's just crazy. Project 2025, if it becomes a reality, here's another part to think about. If Project 2025 becomes a reality, it would phase out income-driven repayment programs, put colleges on the hook for unpaid student loans, and eliminate PLUS loans for graduate students and parents of undergrads, as well as eliminate the Office of Federal Student Aid. This is mentioned throughout the 922-page document, but in more direct language on page 327, where it says, quote, the next administration should completely reverse the student loan federalization of 2010 and work with Congress to spin off FSA and its student loan obligations to a new government corporation with professional governance and management. So this could have a big impact on the ability of current students to pay their debts and may dissuade future students from considering obtaining a college degree. In turn, in an environment of declining enrollments and lower external fundraising, some colleges and universities could be strained to cover their increasing operating costs and salaries. Educational institutions would find it more difficult to fund existing and replacement technology and to invest in newer, innovative, and productive technologies. Colleges and universities already on the verge of closing might have to close their doors permanently. And you know that means HBCUs. And abolishing the Department of Education, Project 2025, also aims to eliminate Title I. Y'all probably heard it's called the Every Student Succeeds Act. These funds that come with that, they want to eliminate. And those funds provide grants to schools with large populations of low income students. And the purpose of this funding is to reduce the achievement gaps between higher income and lower income districts and ensure children have, in their language of the bill, a fair, equal, and significant opportunity to obtain a high quality education. So they also want to eliminate the Pell Grant. And you know historically who the Pell Grant has helped most. This is Project 2025. You have to educate yourselves, folks. Project 2025. And just so happens just this morning, just 2 hours ago, President Biden on his sick bed, he has COVID, if you didn't know, uh, said this: my administration today is canceling student debt for 35,000 people through public service loan forgiveness, bringing the total number of Americans who have benefited from our various debt relief actions to 4.76 million people. Each of those borrowers, the president says, has received an average of over $35,000 in debt cancellation. These 35,000 borrowers approved for forgiveness today are public service workers, teachers, nurses, law enforcement officials, and first responders who have dedicated their lives to strengthening their communities. And because of the fixes we made to public service loan forgiveness, they will now have more breathing room to support themselves and their families. And I thought that the Republicans were pro law enforcement, pro public service workers, pro first responders, but they don't want this, and they are going to. You can bet your bottom dollar oppose this. They have already opposed it, and this might be something else that they take to the Supreme Court to have it thrown out. But can you imagine telling a doctor, a nurse, I should say, a firefighter, an EMT worker, no, we're not going to forgive your debt. As much they put their lives on the line. That should be enough for anybody to say, okay, if that could be done, if you can forgive their debt, forgive it. Their student debt. Biden says today's announcement comes on top of the significant progress we've made for students and borrowers over the past 3 years. That includes providing the largest increases to the maximum Pell Grant in over a decade, fixing income-driven repayment so borrowers get the relief they are entitled to under the law, and holding colleges accountable for taking advantage of students and families. He says, earlier this year, I laid out my administration's new plans that would cancel student debt for more than 30 million Americans when combined with everything we've done so far. He says, from day one of my administration, I promised to fight to ensure higher education is a ticket to the middle class, not a barrier to opportunity. The president goes on to say, I will never stop working to make higher education affordable, no matter how many times Republican elected officials try to stop us. And Power 96, you're right. He says, it is a blessing because school teachers in the South make peanuts on the dollar, he says. Mike V says, isn't it interesting how Republicans tote J.D. Vance as being a law school graduate, but are completely opposed to canceling student loan debt? Not, it does not surprise in any way that they contradict themselves. They are walking contradictions. Doesn't surprise at all. But regardless of what even his own party is trying to do to him and Vice President Harris, the president continues to try and erase student debt for as many people as possible. And that, folks, is a big deal. It should be a big deal. Should be a big deal. And it's also refreshing, and I'll close with this, to actually see when folks run for office and they make these promises, most of them, they know that good and well that it sounds good and we're not going to really do much about it. This man he and Vice President Harris did promise that they were going to, when they were running for office 4 years ago, that they were going to eliminate or do everything they could to eliminate student debt. And they could have quit when the Supreme Court made its decision and stopped them. They could have quit when these lower courts last month tried to stop them. But they didn't. And 5 million people approximately have been beneficiaries because they didn't quit. Think about that. Think about that as you also think about Project 2025. Yeah, I think it's interesting that 50 Cent could perform at the RNC, but when Michelle Crissette did that, yeah, it was a problem. That's right. It's a good call, Greer. It's a good call. That was a major problem when Michelle Crissette did that. In fact, we haven't really heard from her since then. I haven't really heard a whole lot about her, right? They kind of canceled her. It's we're out of time, but go to our YouTube page, please, and hit subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your cousins, tell Lil Pookie. Subscribe to LIBK-News on YouTube. Just subscribe. It's free. Subscribe. And tomorrow we will talk more about Project 2025. So join us tomorrow as we head into the weekend. Have a great day, everybody.